Hey everybody, it's you Ling and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to sit down and do a little chit chat, get ready with me. I'm in a chatty mood. Ew, shut up. It's just me in this room, really. So today's chit chat, get ready with me is all about why I went from full-time to freelance, a little bit about ambition, goals, life failures, rejection, careers in the time of COVID-19, and becoming my mother's greatest disappointment. Just keep watching. Grab your juice, grab your drinks, grab your gushers, whatever the fuck you're eating, your dinner, I don't know, maybe your makeup brushes, and we're just gonna sit down and have a nice cutie little conversation while we do our makeup. So let's start. I'm bringing y'all in just a little bit closer because I feel like maybe this is a bit more intimate, I'm not sure, but I'm gonna turn on this lamp because it actually didn't add any light whatsoever, but I like the look of it. It's my little bread lamp. I'm really upset because I have been growing this little pimple situation here and it hurts. There's definitely stuff coming to the surface, which is extremely annoying. By the way, I'm just going to moisturize my lips because I had Popeyes for lunch and I am extremely dehydrated. Anyways, let's start off with our face, with our skincare. I actually have a little bit of this Milk Hydro Grip Primer. You know, I really wanted to kind of sit down and talk about my professional, I don't even want to call it professional career. That just sounds so like wrong because I've really truly only been working for 2-3 years, like in the real world as an adult. Maybe if you're out there and you're similar in age to me, you might be dealing with something like this. Personal life struggles, conflating identity with professional value, making your entire identity about your job, how to reconcile being an actual human being when you also have to work 40 to 60 to actually 24 hours out of the day because you actually have stress streams about your job. Where was I going with the sentence? Anyways, I don't know. We're all living under fucking capitalism's goddamn reign, so I'm sure that you probably have experienced this as well. I know what I want to use. I'm gonna use the Milk Flex Foundation. This is really good. I've only tried this maybe 2 to 3 times, but each time my complexion looks incredible, so we are gonna go ahead and use this. I'm taking the shade Light Sand and I'm gonna put this all over my face. Is that too much? We'll find out, I guess. Fresh out of college, I have to say that was maybe one of the scariest moments for me. It was graduating college that really sent me into a prolonged depressive state, which actually I'm still in. Actually felt like I couldn't do anything because I was so overwhelmed by the idea of all the things I had to do. You just spent a shit ton of money, a shit ton of time, 4 fucking years, studying something that you're allegedly gonna go into for the rest of your life. And there is so much pressure to know exactly what you wanna study that will lead into this really traditional kind of trajectory. For me, I studied a mix of shit. I mean, I had no idea what I even liked still. I graduated with 2 degrees. I had a theater major and with a minor in race and ethnicity, and then an integrated design major, which is essentially a bunch of majors mushed together because I couldn't decide what I liked enough or what I liked the most. So I just kind of dabbled in it all. Long story short, it's this pressure to kind of already have all the answers of where you're headed in life. You need to find that job. And then with that comes, and what money are you making? Look like not a failure right after school. And there was also a fear of like, did I just peak? Let's do our brows. I grab my brow freeze, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some on my spoolie here, and I'm gonna run this through my brows. Product dry up and just sit on our brows for a little bit. Concealer! Taking Light Sand. So I'm just gonna take this because this foundation runs just a tad bit deeper than my current skin tone because, well, I'm lacking in vitamin D. All right, let's just bounce this into the skin. There's also a really huge sense of responsibility for first-generation immigrant kids who whose parents have like sacrificed everything to fucking come here, you feel like you can't just really fuck around. You need to go do some shit. Make sure that those parents are 100% taken care of. I personally have put a lot of pressure on myself to do something out of this world because it needs to be something that's worth the sacrifice. And especially when you've chosen a path that is not considered traditional or one that feels stable enough to make you the kind of money that, let's say, a doctor or a lawyer will make, you're already kind of like, well, I've disappointed them already. And there's that mix of it feeling kind of like a privilege to pursue your dreams when also you're like, I want to take care of my parents, but why do I have to do this? Why do I have to choose this path when all these other kids who were born into money or, you know, are of a certain race and class kind of just do whatever? They're fucking around. I have no time to fuck around. I don't have the privilege to really fuck around. And yet, that's kind of what ended up happening. I was so overwhelmed fresh out of college because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I finished college and then I realized, did I even like design? Now what am I supposed to do? I was really hesitant to do anything, and I think I was actually scared of being rejected or scared of failing. Now, brush my brows down, and then I'm gonna brush them back up. You wanna brush them into the shape that you want them to hold for the rest of your day. We're gonna take our pomade, and we're just going to define some of those strokes. This makes me feel like I have such full brows. All right, let's do some bronzer. Stick in Mocha, where I want to blend. And I will be contouring a bit of my nose. And then just doing a light little blend. I ended up having just a number of months where I felt just kind of really shitty about myself. I'm taking the RCMA No Color Powder. Okay, do you remember this? I'm like, does anyone use this still? Because this is still such a good powder. People used to rave about this shit all the time. I bought like 10 of them. Right before I hit that slump, actually, I applied to like 30 jobs. I was just sending my application on LinkedIn, and it was that kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just gonna apply to shit. But the sucky thing about job search, especially when you're doing entry level, is just must have 5 years of experience. Where was I supposed to get those 5 years of experience? I was just in school for 4. What? I applied to a shit ton of things from the jump, and then I just hit a wall. And what really made me hit that wall was me not meeting other people's expectations, or the idea of how well I would succeed not being consistent with what I would actually do. And that already made me feel like a failure. I was not really taking myself seriously because I was like, oh yeah, you know what, like I'm gonna do this job, so like that job I won't even consider because it's like not good enough for me, or whatever it was. I was just in my head, but honestly I was a little scared that, you know, what if I can't even get this simple job? Like what if I can't even get like an entry-level job at like a random ass company? And that was the fear because I had applied and I didn't hear back. Really, the reality is it's just a really shitty process. It's hard to find a job when you're fresh out of school. Safety net of college was slowly starting to disappear from my sight. I was an RA for 3 years. I had housing, and then I realized, oh my God, I need to move out in actually 1 month, and I don't have a place to live. And then I checked my savings and realized I just spent all of my money that I had earned up from my part-time job on a summer wardrobe. What the fuck? Why are you operating in this way? Check your reality. And I wasn't picking up a lot of shifts. I was just kind of relaxing, chilling, rewatching Game of Thrones until it really hit me that, hey girlie, your life is really just in your own hands. No one else is responsible for that, and you're not like these kids who have a safety net. No, this was like, I'm gonna be begging my mother for the extra $10 that she makes a month for a winter coat. So when that reality kind of sunk in, I realized, yeah, I need to get my shit together. I take this Innisfree blush that I have. It's called My Blusher 3. Okay, so I'm gonna use that. Little blush. blushity. Cute. I'm just gonna go pretty ham with this all over the face. The thing that kind of set me into gear, aside from all of that, was when I made a trip home to San Francisco and I hung out with my best friends from home, and they'd seen that I was, not really happy or excited, and they said, you're working part-time at this little boba shop that you've been working since, your second year of college, and they have a location here, like, don't you want to just come back and chill out, hang out with us, and save some money? And I don't know what made me so emotional that day, but I think that it was the idea of having to return home as failure, but not as in like, if you have to go home and save some money, like that is not a failure whatsoever, but it was more so that I didn't even give myself a chance to fail in New York before I packed my bags. I'm so fucking stubborn, it had to be like, no, I actually need to see that I tried every avenue possible and failed, which is why then I need to go home, regroup, and then come back. But for me, it was, I didn't even give myself a chance to do any of that. And that's when I realized, like, I was just in my own way of moving forward. That's kind of when I kicked my ass into high gear, realized, like, I need to be the one to figure out my housing. I need to be the one to figure out my job. And I need to stop sulking for a hot second and just do it. At this point, I had ended up at my friend's apartment, sleeping in her couch for a little bit, but I ended up being really lucky and found an apartment within budget because it had no windows. Never been more grateful for a glorified closet. You need to do what you gotta do, and sometimes that just means if you wanna stay in the city that you wanna stay in, you're gonna have to make sacrifices, AKA no natural light for a couple of years. Okay, we're gonna go with our colorful look today, so we're gonna use the Made by Mitchell palette. I was fucking grinding. I started to grind. I was like, I'm picking up every single fucking shift available. I need what? The money. To what? Eat. In order to what? Survive. Every single food service worker, they deserve $100,000 minimum. That's your basic income situation, please. Amend everyone's policy to reflect that. Thank you very much. I was grinding, I was working really hard, I was applying to different things, and the minute I got back from San Francisco, a job that I had applied to back in like May, right before I was going to graduate, had gotten back to me. Are you still looking for a job? Because we just got around to our hiring process and you were in the mix and we liked your thing. And I was like, absolutely sign me up. I went through 2 to 3 rounds of interviews over the course of 2 months. And in January of 2019, I was offered the job and I started. The wild thing is, my roommate right now, Mariah, had applied for the same position and it was down to us both. And they ended up obviously giving me the job, but they loved her so much, they hired her later and now we're fucking roommates. Isn't that fucking insane? I'm gonna tap this color on gently to start shaping my eye. I'm taking Bora Blue. I like that. Because now we go into full-time territory and what it's like working full-time. The adjustment from even just like high school to college, it was fine because like, you're still in school, you're going to classes, and it was a little bit like, oh my god, like I'm going to like a university instead of like a high school. This was like, oh shit, like I work a job now. Like I work a job where I have to go in from 9 to 5 every day, and I have coworkers, I have colleagues. It was a different vibe. The entire like behavior and the office language, the office lingo. Yo, it's not casual over here, I can't talk about like eating ass in the break room. I didn't talk about that in my other job, but it was like, you can't talk about those things because you'll get reported to HR. I'm gonna do like a slightly deeper blue. Into a new kind of performance. It wasn't like a casual setting anymore. It was, I need to put on my Ling corporate face. This is my like professional phase. To be there for so long, you want people to like you as well. You want to make a good impression. And so a big part of it wasn't just like, I'm also here to do my job. It's like, I'm here to build relationships. I need to make sure that I understand. I need to maintain these like professional relationships. I need to, you know, grow in this way. And then, you know, you're actually tracked with your progress. You have these reports. It was so intense. Like, and it was such an interesting world to have to adjust to, and an interesting way to kind of reframe the way I showed up at the workplace. In many ways, I started to feel like, even though it came with all of these amazing things that I associated with stability and success and class mobility, all of these things, for some reason, I still felt very out of place. I'm not gonna go into the details of the company. I'm instead gonna just talk about workplace in general, because I feel at times that can be really daunting. That class difference, when things are really, really nice and shiny and you feel almost pampered to be in a workplace, it felt odd to me because that's not what I grew up with. But more importantly, I began to have this personal anxiety of imposter syndrome of, do I belong here? Some of the cultural references that they're referencing, like, I don't understand that. Or, haha, I'm gonna laugh at this joke that I don't get completely, but like everyone else seems to get it. It felt almost like there was like a secret language that I had yet to tap into. And some of it was like maybe just me psyching myself out, but also part of it was like, is this a major class difference in how I show up, or, you know, how I see the world? My imposter syndrome ended up taking over in really intense ways in my full-time job. And I think that's in part because it was my very first job. It was a startup culture. It scaled really, really quickly, and people were very much about glamorizing or romanticizing. Like, I worked till 12 a.m. last night, or yeah, I had to do this overtime. I'm working on the weekends. It just became kind of the norm. And so I also wanted to make sure I don't want to look like I'm a fucking slacker. I need to show up 10 times harder than these bitches show up too, because I need to prove my worth. And a lot of it felt like the whole time just catching up to proving my worth for the paycheck that I was getting, because I felt like I had never had this much money in my entire life. I was making more money than my parents, and it felt almost like there was something to be guilty for. Like, do I deserve this? What did I do to earn this? And then I started psyching myself out and thinking, do I have the skills to do the thing that I need to do here? Or do they know that they hired a fraud? Like, everything that followed was just making sure that I worked so hard that they knew I was not a fraud. It was kind of proving that imposter syndrome of like, I want to make sure that they know I'm not an imposter, but they think I'm an imposter, right? I just wanted to make sure that they knew, hey, I belong here, when really like they hired you because they know that you did. You know, it's like sometimes you're just like, what? Do I though? Are you sure? And it's the constant need for validation that ended up becoming extremely debilitating and silencing. I found that I couldn't say a lot of, you know, the things that I wanted to say, because, you know, when you're in the classroom and like the teacher calls on you and you're like that happens. Or it's just like, you know that you have the answer, but why can't you bring yourself to say it? That's a whole entire adjustment. I wonder if people just feel this way for their very first job in general, of learning how to speak your mind, learning how to be direct, and learning how to just really like have an opinion and like not worry whether or not it's right or wrong. But again, it was kind of like I was really just psyching myself out. I think the money changed me, the atmosphere changed. I'm gonna go in first with a shade. The more money I was making, the more time I felt I owed this place. If you're a first-gen immigrant, all you really know is work. Like, you work so you can keep food on the table, but this wasn't it, you know. I wasn't working in order to survive in the way that I was right out of college. I was working now for, you know, professional development and like getting to the next step. But then I started to fall into this cycle of, now I'm just working for more money. If they're taking up so much of my time, then I deserve more money. And it became this constant fight after more money, more, like a better title, a better job. And I felt so, I don't know, I still felt stuck. Like, I didn't feel like I was being fed in many ways. Feeling really annoyed with myself. I was upset all the time. I think it's because then I started to conflate my identity with my professional work. I was like, my work is my identity. That's who I am. And, you know, especially when you work for like a mission-based company, you feel like when they fail, I fail. And it's a direct reflection of me. You've got your job, and your job is where you make money in order to survive. And then you've got your work. And your work is what feeds actual inner sustenance for your soul. Over the course of that year and a half that I was working full time, I had 2 performances that I did. I used to make things for myself. I used to write performances. I would perform on stage. I was craving a lot of that, and it quickly went missing. I was passing up a lot of opportunities, or I was just saying, no, I don't have time to do that stuff anymore because I need to make money. And it would be an excuse of because I need to survive. But really, it ended up feeling like I wasn't feeding a part of myself, paying attention to something, to an impulse. I was almost killing it off. And a big part of that was a creative impulse. I needed to do something, I wanted to make something, but instead I was more so concerned with making more money, impressing the boss, making sure that, like, you know, by the end of next month, I would get a promotion, and I would get more money tied with that promotion, and then I can buy this thing, and then I can have that thing, and then I can move into a better apartment. And it was very much like, then I will level up like this. And in many ways though, it felt like I wasn't growing. Like I was having a very one-note experience. My reach wasn't going far enough. I felt like I was in another bubble. It felt really stifling. It felt like I was stuck. And it also felt like I was kind of losing myself. I started to question, why am I here? What am I doing with my life? This is the Essence blush that I got for like literally $2, and I've used it for years, and I love it so much. When I first gotten the job, it felt like, yay, I amounted to something. You know, like my skills were not wasted. But then it became reverse, where I was like, my skills are wasted. Like I'm not doing anything that I studied. I was in social media and I was doing creative work, but I felt like I was missing out on the fun creative process of actual making. I wasn't binding any more books, which just sounds ridiculous because like, are you making money off of binding books? You are if you're a book artist. But you know, it was more so, I'm not performing anymore, I'm not writing anymore, I'm not making anymore. This fucking sucks. And that's kind of where I got into it. Felt more so like a constant cycle of, I get up, I go to work, I buy the same fucking matcha latte, and then I go take a walk in the middle of work, I buy a fucking salad from Sweet Green, and then I work until 8:30 p.m. and then I go out to eat with my friends, and I get home at 11:30, and then I think, I need to do this all over again tomorrow. Really became exhausting to the point where I no longer knew what I was doing there. I no longer felt like I was growing or that I was meant to be there. And then all of a sudden, the comforts that I have, I no longer craved, you know? It was like, I was like, great, I have all of this, and then now what? What will make me happy? And the only answer that came to mind was, well, just more. So I just kind of fell into this pattern for a good, you know, couple of months of, I guess I'm just here until I find the next big thing, which will take me into the next bracket of money that I'm going to make. And, you know, I got a raise at one point and I was like, fuck yeah, this is awesome. And that made me happy for a hot second. And then I was like, it's the same shit still though. I'm gonna look at this, so I'm going to add some mascara. I'm not gonna speak too much about the company itself because shit went down and I signed an NDA, so I don't know how much I can actually say legally. At some point in time, it felt like things were beginning to crumble personally, but also in a larger sense of my workplace. Some mascara. Do you see the number that capitalism does on our fucking brains and bodies? So then COVID-19 hit. And the Panera Bread really just, it shook the world. The company had its first round of layoffs where I would say over half of the company was let go. That was extremely traumatizing because, you're like, holy shit, I've just worked with these people for an entire year and a half and now they're all out of jobs in the middle of literally a pandemic. And then it was all over. The ship was sinking. We felt it was a whole bunch of triaging and just like figuring out shit to do, ways to pivot the company. And for a moment, you know, it felt kind of exciting because then I was like, oh yeah, now we can get kind of creative. Now there's no real rules. I was motivated to bring all my friends back. But then of course, a couple months later, we weren't done yet. The resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement happened and people were calling for accountability and response from a lot of these brands. Like it's not something that you could have ignored. Sometimes it feels weird to say like people like woke up for the first time that summer, but it really was an incredible reckoning to kind of witness. These brands that were built during an era of a response to Donald Trump, you know, of like we are the girl bosses, this is the girl boss era. Obviously it was a long time coming, but I've never seen, at least in social media, the way that people had called for brands to just like shut up and listen, but also like do something about it. Like, what the fuck are you doing? A lot of these brands that kind of came up out of a response, I would say, to like Trump, or had built their brand off of being community-based, like mission-based, were really like, people were going in on these fucking brands, and it was like, fuck yeah, but it was also like, holy shit, I'm part of that. Like, I work for that brand. So it was kind of like, oh my goodness. And, you know, things kind of just came crumbling down, and in the same way, like personally, it felt like it was coming to a climax, and then also it was coming to a climax. And in June 2020, I was laid off. First thing that came to mind was, thank God, somebody kicked me out before I could leave myself. It was a guilt of like, I can't leave here because I need to survive, but it was like, well, now I have no choice. Now you really do have to search for something new when your gut was kind of telling you to do so anyway from the beginning. Very quickly it was, oh shit, I'm laid off in the middle of a Panasonic. What? And I had been playing Animal Crossing for the past 550 hours straight. I had forgotten what the fuck it meant to even update my resume. I was like, where am I going to go? After I'd been through so much of this workplace trauma and then also real life trauma, I was like, I don't know if I even have the mental, emotional, spiritual capacity to fucking apply for these places. But at the same time, my survival ass kicked into gear. Bitch, no time to fuck around. You need to find a place because you want to eat? It's time to go. I have no time to put this car into park. We're fucking going full speed ahead. I started applying to places. I was reaching out everywhere, and this was when I had already known that I was gonna get laid off, and I just don't have the motivation, and yet every cell in my brain and body was like, but you need to do it. It had always been, it's gotta be another full-time job because I need health insurance, I need stability, I need to figure out what the hell I'm going to do with my life, and I need to have a cushion, I need to have savings because who knows what could happen tomorrow. And this is when I decided to give freelance a try. I knew I was gonna be laid off. My friends obviously knew. My old boss, I know you're probably looking for things, but this is a cute little gig. If you're interested, like, let me know. And it felt kind of nice because I'm like, you know what? It's gonna take a while for me to probably find a full-time job. I just need to make sure I have a little bit of cushion before I even figure anything else out. Like, as long as I make some money to make sure I make ends meet by the end of this month, I'll be okay. Applied for the position, and I ended up getting it. The sweetest team. And then I was just working that. And I was like, okay, this is kind of nice. Like, this is just a couple of hours every single day of the week, and I could see myself doing this for a little bit. If I picked up a number of clients, I could meet the same salary probably that I was making at this full-time job. I was still in the survival mode, and I went from literally having 2 clients to having 6 clients. It was absolutely ridiculous. Okay, I'm gonna do my little lining of the lips. I line my lips so ugly. Thank you. I need some fucking lip gloss because my lips are parched. From MAC, this is their Glow Play. I actually like this stuff. This is a little glossity, not glossity, this is a little balm. Let that kind of moisturize the lips for a bit before I go in with the full color. Although that's kind of a hot color. Maybe we'll just keep that. Highlight. I used to fucking love Becca highlights. Everyone would rave about these. Am I just using like old school products? Okay, I'm gonna take some of this. And for a public park, I worked for a mobile gaming company for women. I was working for like an accessories company, a wellness brand, food company, and then like one or two other little gigs on the side, and it was actually overkill. I wasn't thinking about my mental health. I wasn't thinking about the fact that I was already exhausted and tired, and you know, that we were living through this, whatever this is. I was so burnt out. Like I had already been so burnt out from this full-time job. I had forgotten to actually take care of myself, and I was on high burnout. I was still operating and doing all the things, but my brain was mush. That spray. Love it. Freckles! It was so stressful, but it was stressful because I had so much work to do. I was in back-to-back meetings, and I didn't know how to set my boundaries. I was working quite literally from 7 a.m. to midnight every single day. My actual work was suffering for it because I picked up so many people that I was actually excited about, but I didn't really know how to handle that because for the first time, you're the boss of your own schedule. You need to figure out what your boundaries are as a freelancer, and I was so new to this. I was just in the mindset of, as long as I'm making the money, I will figure it out. But then I ended up really suffering for it. I made so many mistakes in terms of taking things on that I shouldn't have. It was bad for a little bit in terms of my mental health and in terms of my work quality. At the same time, there was a slight pivot of, for some reason, I am working more than I've ever worked in my entire life, and yet I don't feel attached to the work because I'm a freelancer. It was a little bit like, I'm just here for this many hours and you have me, but then goodbye. Like after that, I'm like, I'm leaving. I'm only responsible for this. I don't need to come and like pretend like I'm part of your whole mission. I'm not responsible for that. That's all you, boo. I'm taking Freck, you know the name of the game, and I'm going to make this big pimple into a beauty mark. Like that's so cute. Cute. And then we're just gonna add a couple of like random ones. Yeah. Imposter syndrome was just out the window. I was like, what? Fuck that shit. Because I was so over it. And that's not to say it happened overnight. It was more so that people were hiring me for this specific skill set that I have, that I didn't feel like I was proving myself because they were only hiring me for this one specific thing. And I was like, well, I absolutely can do that for you. And then I started to believe in myself as an authority in my field. I am a social media manager. Yes, you need to build out a content calendar. I got you. You need to strategize your best in-house content. Absolutely. You need to figure out how the fuck to storytell for your brand. I do that with my eyes closed. When you apply for a full-time job, you don't get to trial run a place. You can do that sometimes. A lot of these gigs were like, it's gonna be freelance to possible full-time if we like you, which was like, okay, cool. But I was also like, honestly, I'm not really in a rush. Like I want to see if I even like you guys first. And that's kind of the same thing as, when they say, oh, you're interviewing for the job, but you're also interviewing the job. I didn't really get a full sense of that. And I also feel when you're doing that for a full-time place, you don't get to trial run. You don't get to say like, I'm gonna try this out for a month, and if I don't like you guys, like I'm gonna dip out of here, but like please pay me for the things that I did do. No, like you sign an entire fucking contract, and then you need to spend your time there, and then you feel like you've built a whole rapport with people and with the company. Then you're stuck there. Next thing you know, you're 65 and you've been at the same company for 89 years. It was almost like trial testing a million different places and just kind of seeing like, what the fuck is happening here? Then you start to pick up on how people work, the working styles of different companies, what you think works well, what you think does not. And then you kind of build up your own personal kit of, not only are you specialized in this one thing, but you kind of see the processes that other people have built up for themselves, and you bring it to other places, and then you iterate and you make it better. Is this cute? No. You kind of have all the benefits of being at a place without being committed to that place. It's like being a freelancer, being the fuckboy of the professional working world, because obsessed. Took 5 months of just constant overworking and extreme burnout for me to realize, yeah, you know what, I don't want to do that. I want to start making things for me again. I miss being in a classroom. I miss that curiosity. And I think actually freelance brought a little bit of that out. Make the more you're gonna always want. And I had to make a decision. I was like, do I just want more money? Will that make me happier? In 2021, I made a promise to myself to follow my gut. 2020, I ended up dropping a number of clients. I was like, this is not sustainable. This job is not serving me actually. I'm not excited about this, or that I'm doing a terrible job and like y'all should find someone who has the bandwidth to do a better job, which is why I had to let a couple of people go. And looking back now, like I'm gonna probably beat myself up for this because I am my #1 worst critic. Anything that you think you can say to hurt my feelings, I've already said 10 times in my head. Except when you do say it out loud, I will get annoyed. And I will be deeply offended. But that's besides the point. Fucked up so many times, and what I've come to find is that when you fuck up, you learn a lot more and you get a lot more comfortable with your failures. And I'm still not comfortable necessarily with that. I can say it and I can get really heady about it, but deep down I'm still embarrassed and very much ashamed when I make a mistake or when I do fail, because it still feels like it's a full reflection of who I am as a whole person. But that's for another discussion completely. And it was more so about being more honest with myself and having more clarity with what I wanted to do. And it was just this weird emotional shift where I, for the first time, was like, you know what? Yeah, I don't want to do that. And it's gonna require a sacrifice, and the sacrifice is money. But I've already been in a place where I made money and I didn't feel like my time was my own. I didn't feel like I knew how to set my boundaries. But this was the turning point of, I am gonna set my boundaries now because I want my time back, and I want my time to do the things that I'd like to spend my time doing, which is work, not a job. So that impulse ended up showing up in content. I was making a lot more makeup stuff. I wanted to actually do the YouTube channel that I wanted to do, that I had said I wanted to do 7 years ago, because I felt like I was finally in the right mindset to do it. Or I think it wasn't like I decided I was in the mindset, it just felt like, yeah, I'm ready to do this. And not for any other reason than I really want to create stuff. And not for money. I'm not trying to fucking monetize this right now. I just want to do this because it's the impulse that I have. I don't have a lot of money, but I can make ends meet. I can eat, I can pay my rent, and I can have a little bit extra to maybe buy a lip gloss here and there. And your time is precious, and it is okay to take a step back from these things when you need a little bit more clarity to figure out what the hell you're doing. Letting society tell you what you're supposed to do can really cloud your judgment for finding what you actually want to do. And I think that that's been the biggest shift, and why I'm so happy with moving away from the romanticizing of like, yeah, I work so hard and I do so much and I'm so underappreciated at my workplace, to, man, fuck it, like I have a couple clients, I'm doing my thing, I'm figuring it out. And like, who knows, 2 months from now, maybe that'll change because maybe I need to actually eat. I need to stop talking because I, simply put, you guys don't want to hear it, do you? Anyways, I would love to hear from you what your journey's kind of been. Where have you been the past year? Are you also 25 and struggling and just trying to figure your shit out? Please sound off down below. That's all for today, and I will see you in the next one, and thank you for sitting down and chatting with me. And until next time, why did I say it like that? And until next time, I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.